Welcome back, one and all. Mike, Martz, and JT here. We're talking football once again. Playoff races are shaping up. It won't be long now. Christmas just around the corner. I'm sure our wives, Mike, have got all the shopping taken care of. If that sounds sexist, we talked about it last week. We have no control over the budget. Like I said, I'm lucky if I get an allowance.
No, I shop. I just don't worry about the budget.
So you got me something then?
Well, I did last year. I didn't
What
get
are
you
you
a bottle of
laughing
wine
about?
or something. I think I'd like doing the grandkids stuff. I like shopping for the grandkids and for our kids. Clothes, no, but got to try and help her out a little bit. She's so busy. She's over at doing the grandkids this morning, so she's more busy than she's ever been. So I'll do dishes, make the bed, and do some of that stuff, and try to.
So wait a minute now. What you're saying is I'm out. I'm not. I didn't make the list of Christmas presents.
You made the list. I just don't know when Santa's going to deliver. That's all.
Well, Mike, I've always felt the NFL is a classic case of what happened in 1 week very often has absolutely nothing to do with what happens the next week. And we had some pro and con example of that. Let's start with the Thursday night game. When we do the Thursday night game on the show, it always seems like it's a month ago. So the Rams score 44 points in upsetting Buffalo. The Niners score a season high 38 points, beating, I think it was Chicago. They meet on Thursday night, the two NFC West foes. It's the first game all year without a single touchdown. 12-6 Rams. I will say this about the Rams, Mike, that under Sean McVay, and we've had a lot of praise for him on our show, they can win in different ways. They can win high-scoring ways. They just have a kind of a resiliency to them, don't you think? Here they eke out a 12-6 win. It was a driving rainstorm in the first half, hard to do anything, but they found a way to win.
I think one of the things that I really like about him, that's I think pretty true in all guys that win like this. He's really high energy. His personality, he doesn't have those ebb and flow kind of moments. He's pretty strong all the way through, but more importantly, he's a great teacher. The details of the game on both sides of the ball are well done. He holds his coaches to that standard. Their standard doesn't change, and that's why they're in it all the time, regardless of who's lining up for him. I think he does a great job with all that stuff. I think he's a terrific leader.
7-2 now in their last 9 games for the Rams after a slow start. Had some of their key people out, both the star receivers, Kupp and Nakua. I think the West is theirs. Don't you think so? They're 8-6.
I would think so. Yeah, I know that. Watching Seattle, they're faltering here a little bit. I think they're the most consistent now that they're healthy again. They were missing so many guys here for a while, but they've recovered, and they're playing so well right now. And I know that a lot of scoring wasn't in that game, but I think the circumstance and the weather around had a lot to do with it, to be honest with you. But he went in halftime and regrouped, and they did a good job. They just know what they're doing. They just adjust, and nothing seems to phase them. They just are in the fight no matter what.
And a lot of young players on defense
Yes.
for the Rams. They seem to have, not that you can ever replace an Aaron Donald, but they seem to have survived his departure okay, maybe a little better than okay.
Yeah, I think better than what everybody would think. That's pretty hard to move on after such a dominant player like he was, not just on the field physically, but his personality. It's a little bit like Aeneas Williams when he was with us. It's bigger than life, and he brings everybody along with him and elevates them. And when that goes, somebody's got to fill in the ranks. Most times, has to be 3 or 4 guys. And that'll happen over time.
So, has this ever happened to you? So Devondre Campbell, he's benched because Dre Greenlaw returns from an injury. Campbell doesn't like it. He refuses to go in. Anything like that ever happened to one of your teams?
No.
Where players said, "No, I'm not going in, Mike."
No. If it's me, and we give him the green light, I hand him his plane ticket as soon as the game's over with. He go play for somebody else if somebody else will take him. I don't know anybody would take him at this point. Who wants to play next to a guy like that?
Well, the comments from his teammates reflected exactly what you're saying. And so he would be at the Greyhound bus station. I believe Will Levis, after he made a series of boneheaded turnovers early in the season. You gave him a bus ticket, so they'd be waiting at the Greyhound bus station, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, they both they got the 12 o'clock bus ride home. Yep.
All right, Chiefs at the Browns. Believe it or not, Mike, 21-7. The Chiefs have played so many close games. I think they've won 10.
Was
10
that
or 11?
Excuse me, Jim? Was that at the Browns or at the Chiefs?
That was at the Browns. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was at the Chiefs.
Was it at the Chiefs?
Because when we talked about it, so it was at the Browns, and that's what I thought. That's why I picked them. I thought it ended up being at Kansas City.
No, you picked the Chiefs, Mike.
I did?
Yeah. According to my notes, yeah. Anyway, 21-7. That's the most lopsided win that they've had. Thanks largely to 6 turnovers for the Browns, but Mahomes left with about 5.5 minutes left with an ankle injury. They're talking like he's going to play. Mike, a high ankle sprain is usually what, 2 to 4?
A real high ankle sprain, a real live high ankle sprain for a perimeter guy is 4 to 6 weeks. Now the trainers would always come in and say 2 to 4 weeks, but my experience with a high ankle sprain, so somebody's got cut and do all that kind of stuff, you're looking at least a month.
Yeah.
And unless it's not a high ankle sprain, or unless it's just a minor one. But who knows? You know, I was on the 33rd team here the other day, and the doctor that we always have on there, she seemed to think it wouldn't be unreasonable to see him this week. But I can't imagine that being the case unless he's got 12 cc's in there or something. You know,
12 what?
12 cc's of some bug juice in there to take the pain out.
Bug juice. Yeah. Now I realize they want to get the number 1 seed. You get a week off, you get home field. We know how good Arrowhead, but it seems like they're playing with fire here. And again, we don't know the doctor reports. We're not in Kansas City, but boy, like I said, this seems pretty risky if they throw him out there. And you got Carson Wentz, who isn't the worst backup in the league, I would think,
I think Carson Wentz in a good program like this with a good organization like they are, and what the good job they do with quarterback, I think he'll be just fine. I think he went through some really bad things, and a lot of it probably was his fault, but he's probably at the point now where he's got something to prove. I think he'll play well for him. Yeah.
Now, if he plays, we'll see. Mike, you worked him out. I remember you worked out both Goff and Wentz, and what the agent wanted you to look at him. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what did you think of Wentz when you worked him out? This is coming out of college before the draft, before he was drafted.
Oh, he was a no-brainer in the workout. I mean, he had a phenomenal workout. They both did. But Wentz was as good a workout as I've seen. I mean, his abilities in terms of just getting the ball out quick with his hand and his accuracy, he's got the big arm, and yet he's got good touch. He can lay it in there. He's coachable as all get out. I just thought he would be a no-brainer in terms of making it. But, I thought the same thing about Sam Hubbard too.
Yeah. Monday night football game, Vikings beat the Bears 30-12. It's funny. I thought the Vikings, maybe they had their B minus game on offense. Then you look up at the end of the game, Mike, and they still scored 30 points. So that's a pretty good offense, huh?
Yeah, and I think when you put the film on of the Bears, they just look bad. They're a bad team. And I think you're not going to hide that from your players. So all week when you go into preparation for that game, you just continue to talk about playing to a standard and don't worry about who these guys are.
If you're the Vikings?
If you're the Vikings, yeah. And it's still hard to do because these guys, they look at the tape. They know what they're playing. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I've been noticed watching all these games is how quarterbacks throw on the move. And, when Dallas played Cincinnati, seeing how Joe Burrow throws on the move, which is tremendously, and Cooper Rush just couldn't. He was high. He was off target. What I see at Caleb Williams right now, it doesn't look like he's throwing that well on the move for a guy who's really mobile. Have you noticed that, or do you think that might be an issue with him? He seemed high and a little wide on some of those throws.
I didn't notice that, Jim. There's it could be going to the left, going to the right. You have to actually, just like pass drops, you have to work on that stuff. You just didn't go out and all of a sudden it works for you. I mean, you have to train and go through those drills, because you got to flip your hips and your shoulders and do all that kind of stuff. If they don't ever do it, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that he misses it, because you have to come downhill at the target in your last step. There's a lot of little things that you have to do to be accurate on the run. You can't just run to the side and throw it off to the side like Mahomes does. I mean, he's a freak, but there's some things to help you become consistent with it. And then just not knowing when you break outside, Jim, those receivers all have rules. They should. Watching the games now, they don't, but they have wherever they are, come back hard, go to the end zone, come across and lose ground and come fast. And I watch the games when quarterbacks get outside. Half of them are just kind of stumbling around like they don't know what's going on. So it's hard to throw to guys like that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's going to be an issue at the Bears right now, because nobody knows what anybody else is doing. So I wouldn't judge anything about Caleb Williams based on what's going on this year.
Yeah. I get that. The other thing though is, and some Bears players, I don't know if outspoken is the right word, but that when Matt Eberflus left, there were a lot of players that were in favor of that, I guess you could say, from what you heard. So do the Bears make a statement once he's gone? A lot of times in hockey, they call it the new coach bump. No, Mike, they're 0-2 without him. They've been, since Eberflus left, they've been outscored 68-25. So he may not have been the solution, but he probably wasn't totally the problem.
Well, there's probably some organization to it, though, and some direction. Whether it's really good or not doesn't matter, but at least there was direction and organization. And it sounds like when you move a coordinator that's never done it into that position, he's got to do all those things, and knows he's not going to probably be there next year, or he's not, because whoever's going to come in is going to clean everybody out. So
right,
he's not motivated, so it's just kind of the students are running the classroom,
Yeah. To our theme off the top of 1 week sometimes not having anything to do with the next week, we mentioned with the Rams offense going from 44 to 12 points. The opposite was the case in the Bills-Lions. The Bills scored 42 in that loss to the Rams, and they come right out and score 48 against the Lions. What a shootout that was. It's like an Arena League game, 48 to 42. So the Bills have scored 90 points in the last 2 weeks and are only 1-1. Here's the weirdest stat of the year, Mike. Jared Goff threw 5 touchdown passes in this game against the Bills and lost. Earlier in the season, just a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving against Houston, he threw 5 interceptions and won. So, boy, you just never know game to game.
No, and that's the thing about interceptions. There's reasons for those things. Some of them they just happen. Ball gets tipped, whatever. Most of the time, there's a real good explanation for it, other than the guy just made a dumb decision. And those are the things that I look at. We lost a playoff game against New Orleans. We had, I think we had 4 interceptions in that game, but at least 3 of those the quarterback got fooled, and it was the same guy. So there's reasons for that stuff. You have to be careful drawing anything from that. You just reload and keep going at the wall there, so to speak. But it doesn't always. What those interceptions are and how they happen is really, really important.
So that's the one thing you try to really find out. Why did that happen? And do you know right on the spot, or do sometimes you have to look
most of the time? Yeah, most of the time. It's just like in coaching with quarterbacks. During practice, if there's an interception or a bad play, I never corrected the quarterback on the practice field. Mm-hmm. I think what I saw standing off to the side next to him happened, but I don't know for sure what he saw or why he threw it. So you wait till you get in there and look at the tape. Most of the time, I'm not right.
Really? Okay.
So I'll go in there. I think, well, that's a dumb throw. Why? Then I come back in there and I can see what happened. The receiver was too short, or this, that, or there's a reason for it, and
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily his fault. So you have to be careful with all that. Very few times, and I do interception tapes all the time throughout the. Go back and look at it to make sure judgment's good and all that sort of thing. Very, 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 very few times is it because he just made a bad decision.
Now, Detroit already tons of injuries. They lose David Montgomery for the season. They lost 3 more defensive starters. Mike, I always think that a lot of times you can deal with so many more injuries, but then you can hit a tipping point where it's just too much to overcome. I think your 2002 team just hit a tipping point where there were too many injuries.
Yeah.
Can the Lions overcome this?
No, I don't think so. They got too many people hurt on defense, Jim. And I think losing Montgomery, their power back, I'm just not sure. Obviously, they'll go into the playoffs, and they may do pretty well initially, but I don't believe they're going to get past the NFC Championship game. I just, they're just not good enough on defense with the guys that they've lost. They're not going to get the Anceloni. I don't know when he's coming back, and
Right.
the defensive end. They lost so many guys over there. Shoot, they lost a corner with a broken jaw tackling.
Yes.
I mean, they just got so many guys down. It's just like they're bit.
Yeah. And Montgomery, as you mentioned, power back. Now, Gibbs is fantastic. You've compared him to Marshall Faulk, which is about as high praise as you can get. And not that Gibbs is bad inside the tackles, but to me, Montgomery is something special between the tackles and down in the red zone, getting those tough yards, and they're not going to have that now.
Well, yes and no. Gibbs is very powerful inside. He's just not as strong.
Mm-hmm.
He's not he's not just going in there bouncing around and get thrown out of there. He'll go in there. You've seen it time and time again because that's what they do. I think the big thing with him is he just isn't as strong in the legs and as powerful in the hips to push a pile like Montgomery was. Obviously, his big deal is the speed, quickness. But to be honest with you, I don't know who the other back is going to be.
Yeah.
But there'll be somebody else that'll rotate in there with him. But Gibbs, this is his time to shine. It's like, it's all in his back now, and he can definitely do it. Offensively, they'll be just fine, even without Montgomery. But defensively, they've just been hammered with injuries. I don't know how, against a good team now, they're going to be able to slow anybody down.
I think it's something like 16 players on IR. And this isn't college. You don't have an 85-man roster here.
Right.
I want to ask you another Dan Campbell kind of a eye-opening decision. They're down by 10 early in the fourth quarter. Only entering, I think, the Monday night game, only 3 of 44 onside kicks have worked. He dials up an onside kick. And as you know, I think most fans know, you have to declare it now. You don't have the element of surprise. Were you scratching your head on that one?
Yeah, a little concerned about that. In the old days, you could just do it, and it was actually, we used to call it surprise onside, but there's no surprise now. You're not going to get those very often, so there's no need. I just didn't feel like there's no need to do it at the time, but I think he probably regrets it.
Yeah. Well, now people are wondering, and I think it's a fair question. In the playoffs, in these big games, well, his I guess you call it unorthodox sometimes decision making. Could that bite him in a playoff game?
Certainly can. I think he is. I think they think through things a little bit more before games now. I think those situations are pretty well defined. I think he'd like to take that one back. I think I saw somewhere he said he'd like to have that one back. But the difference between Dan Campbell and all the other coaches, he's going to tell you the truth, about all that stuff. So, yeah, I think, and he's a smart guy. He'll learn from that stuff. You're putting the future of that team on the line when you make those decisions. So you got to feel pretty good about it. Going for it on fourth down out in the field someplace when you got a real good play, chances of making it are good. That's different than trying to take a shot where you got like a 15% chance of getting it. That was too risky and too much of a stab in the dark to do it at that
point. Hey, keep it down. Got the little dogs in here, and they're having an argument. Josh Allen, you've loved him for a long time. I guess Saquon Barkley still could set the all-time rushing record over in Philadelphia, but Allen's the MVP, isn't he, right now?
I don't know how he wouldn't be. He's I don't know what else he has to do, but he keeps getting overlooked. He's had so many good years, and this is, I mean, who's he thrown to? Name his
Right.
receivers, right? So, and he's doing what he's doing. Nobody's with just kind of a blue collar group that nobody's ever heard of, right? So, yeah, I don't know. And scoring all those points and the yards, and somebody ought to check. He might sell the programs before the game too. I'm not sure. I mean, what more does he have to do?
And sweep up afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on it. The fact that he's doing this with really a skill group other than James Cook, who's really good, but the receivers, and maybe in a year or two they'll be big stars, but right now there's no Stephon Diggs. They lost a lot of their skill guys. That makes it even more impressive. He had 362 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 68 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Not quite like the week before when he had 3 TDs rushing and 3 passing, but the guy's just amazing.
Well, you have to include in that the coordinator too, because he's done a pretty good job with him. Drawing with the game plans and coaching. They've been, they're just not turning the ball over, and so he's kind of feeding that beast too, so to speak. He's letting them play.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more games from this past week I want to get to. Packers and Seahawks. We both picked the Seahawks on that one. They had won I think 5 in a row, but or 4 games in a row. But even though Smith went out, I still got the feeling that the Packers controlled the game. They were up 20-3 at the half. They scored on their first 4 drives, and that's a pretty good Seahawks defense. Your thoughts on this game, Mike?
I was surprised. I was surprised that defensively how poor I think Seattle played, and I know Geno going out and all that sort of thing, but they are a one-dimensional team, and without him, they're just not nearly the same. He's got such a major impact, and emotionally, it's hard on that team when he goes out. But to the Packers' credit, they look like a really outstanding NFC team. They look like a team that's winning the NFC North,
Right.
When you look at the 3 teams there.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Packers, Minnesota, Detroit Lions, those 3 teams, wow.
Yeah, you got 2 12-2 teams and 1 10-4 team. And I think, is it 3 of the Packers' 4 losses or 2, either the Vikings or the Lions. So those are 3 really blue blood team. But that was a crushing loss for the Seahawks. They're gonna have a hard time holding off the Rams. I think we both agree. The late game, it was one of the many games of the season, the Battle of Pennsylvania, and this was one to me that we both picked the Steelers. The Steelers had been going great, and we talked about before that the Eagles, maybe they're vulnerable because the Steelers can stop the run. And Barkley had only 65 yards. I think it was his second lowest of the season. He was a little shaken up early in the game, didn't really get his full workload. I think he had 19 carries. But, Mike, the Eagles just dominated this game.
They did. They're running on all 8 cylinders right now. They're going good. He got held up a little bit in the running game, but then, of course, quarterback and the rest of it takes over. But defensively, they've quietly gotten better every week. Right now, they're really playing well on defense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the unsung part of how they're playing. And remember, there was a big talk. It was and when your coach, some issue comes up, it just dominates everything. And the big talk was, there's some problems with the passing game, and what did A.J. Brown, where he and Jalen Hurts feuding? Well, they go out and, Brown catches 8 for 110 and a touchdown. Devontae Smith, 11 for 109 and 1 touchdown. So I don't think there's a problem there.
That stuff would happen every week. And now it's blown out of proportion because of social media and everything's exposed. But, 20, 30 years ago, that stuff happened all the time. Nobody knew about it. you just resolve it,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Social media has changed everything. To me, the biggest part of the part of the game that struck me the most was the last drive by the Eagles. We all know the Steelers. They're an alpha team. They're a macho team. They play physical. That final drive, the Eagles, 18 plays, 88 yards. They started at their own 3. They convert 4 third downs, 1 fourth down. It took 10 and a half minutes, and they didn't score. They may have, could have. They just ran out the clock. If you ask me, that's got to bother Mike Tomlin more than anything else about the game, how the Eagles just imposed their will down the stretch.
There's no question about it. That more than anything, that is when you do that to somebody, there's nothing they can do about it. And they got to take a look at it and go home and try and play next week. And that's when you do that to a team, it demoralizes them completely.
Now, people always think of your teams as this high flying, a circus act with the passes, but you had a very good 4-minute drill. This turned out to be a 10.5-minute drill, but you could run out the clock and just play the clock with the best of them.
Yeah, and we were. I think there's a lot of stats in life in terms of the NFL, but the one stat that I'm very proud of, and I don't know where it is today, but we're the best team in the history of the league at protecting the league in the fourth quarter. Because we were a physical team. Those guys were physical, and they put the game away.
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention before we take a break, going back to that Bills game, they scored 30 points for the 8th straight game, which is a franchise record. It also ties the NFL record. I want to harken back to your 2000 Rams team. That was your first year as head coach. You guys, I don't know if you originally set the record, but you went 8 straight games with 30 or more points. My contention is, and even though Trent Green played pretty well, but if Warner doesn't get hurt in the 6th game, you might have you broke a bunch of records that year, but you might have broken every offensive record in the book, because your defense had kind of slowed down, aged, and a lot of those games you had to score the points.
It got to the point after that Kansas City game when we lost it. We were 6-0 going into that game. I just felt like we had to score 35 points every week to have a chance to win. We were so bad on defense, and I'd made a lot of mistakes over there, and I couldn't do anything about it. I brought Bud Carson on the bye week to have him help, and I didn't realize how important John Bunting was to that team, and we had aged significantly on defense. And I was so busy on the other side, I didn't realize all these things in it. So when the season's over with, we had to fix it. But that season, we knew we were going to have to put a bunch of points on the board.
John Bunting had been co-defensive coordinator with Peter Junta in the '99 Super Bowl championship year. But that offense, that was really something special.
We had it going on pretty good. I think the nice thing about it when Kurt was going so good is there's like telepathy. He knew when I called play, he knew exactly why I was doing it. You know what I mean? And why I called it. And he'd shake his head. He'd get halfway through and you could see him just shaking his head on the field. Got it. And off he goes, And then Trent, when he came back, you remember he came off that knee injury. His knee still was not right. It takes 2 years. And so he still had 100 rating for the season.
Yes.
He played really well, but as good as he played, there was still a bit of a difference there.
Yeah. We'll be right back. We're going to ask Mike when we return from these messages.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
We're back. Last week, this past week, very out of character. 10 of the 16 games were at least 2 possession games, meaning they were decided by more than 8 points. That's a season high. So I don't know if that means anything, but there are a lot of, at least by NFL standards, there were a lot of blowouts. Now, in terms of the playoff race this past week, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Vikings got in. The Steelers got in, even though they lost because of some other teams lost around them in the playoff race. And the Bears and Panthers were eliminated. So right now we've got 7 teams that are in, 9 teams that are eliminated, and 16 teams are vying for 7 playoff berths. Mike, you know the league loves it like that. There's still a lot to be decided with 3 weeks to play.
Yeah, but I do think from what you said earlier, there are a lot of teams now that they're out of the picture, and that's where the blowouts happen. You know what I mean? So when they still have a shot at it, everything is kind of competitive. But once they know and they got 3 games left, 4 games left, whatever, and they're out of it, it's hard to keep them involved. It really is in terms of getting to play at a high level.
Mike, in terms of the picks, we took a beating on the late afternoon games at 3 o'clock and the Sunday night game. We both went 5-5. You picked the Niners and I picked the Rams. We differed on that, and then we both picked the I think everybody else. Anyway, our record's still very good. I mean, you're 85-45. That's again straight up, but still that's pretty impressive. And I'm 90 and 40. I want to bring up something about Caleb Williams. I was looking at some sack totals. He's been sacked a franchise record, Mike. You talk about it's not just Caleb Williams. There's problems around him. He's been sacked 58 times now. There's still 3 games to play. That's a franchise record. All time, that's a 4-way tie for 13th. Most sacked quarterbacks. So he could end up in the top 5 by the end of the season. He's taking a beating this year.
You know, part of that is personnel, and the other part of that is, coaching. It just is. You know, the protections and what you're asking him to do and having him get the ball there fast. You're just not helping him, and that's part of it. There's just so many pieces around him, and I think they got it right with him. I think his future, whoever gets that job, I think he's going to provide it's an offensive guy. It has to be an offensive guy. To somebody go in there and straighten that offense out, But yeah, I just you can't lay that on his shoulders. You just can't.
David Carr has the record. He was with Houston in 2002. He was sacked 76 times. Second place is Randall Cunningham, Philadelphia, in 1986. He was sacked 72 times. You look at this list, the top 12 or 13, with just a couple exceptions. They're all young quarterbacks, rookies, 22, 23, 24 years old. And it takes rookies that the game doesn't it move so fast in the NFL compared to college? It takes them a while, doesn't it?
It does. But the biggest thing is the processing, for a quarterback. They have to get back and see and react instead of looking at it and trying to think about where the ball's going to go. There's that. They have to know it so well that they know exactly what's happening in the blink of an eye. And until they get to that point, they're going to take some sacks. But David Carr was never the same. He got beat up so bad. I remember watching that, and he was such a good player coming out of Fresno State.
Yeah.
A juggernaut of football players.
They put out some pretty good tight ends, didn't they?
Yeah, they call it tight end. The big deal is, I think for 3 years, he got beat up so bad, you start watching the protections. And when that happens, you can't help a quarterback.
When what? You're looking at the pass rush instead of looking.
Yeah, you start looking at who's coming and all that. You've been hit so many times. It's just like a fighter, You get punched.
To your point, Mike, just 3 years later, we mentioned Carr, first place was 76. He also holds down third place on the all-time list. And 3 years later, in 2005, he was sacked 68 times. Now, last week was a bad week for interceptions and turnovers by quarterbacks. 9 quarterbacks threw 2 or 3 interceptions. Jameis Winston, 3 interceptions versus the Chiefs. He's benched this week. Your buddy Will Levis, 3 interceptions, 1 lost fumble versus the Bengals. He's benched this week. These 9 quarterbacks that threw at least 9 interceptions, they went 2-7. The only exceptions, Bo Nix, who you love, he had 3 interceptions, but he also threw 3 touchdowns to beat the Colts. And Joe Burrow, who was They won. They beat the Titans, but I don't know if you saw the soundbite. He was so upset, so pissed off after the game.
They didn't play well around him. You know, he plays to its standard, and the rest of that group, they didn't play good. I think Will Levis, you can fix him. You know those dog collars, the shock collars, you put them around his neck. And
of course we do. We have
right
3
when he's going to
dogs.
throw the
with
ball,
bark collars.
just shock him, you know.
Well, you may be onto something. Now there's 3 levels. You can just do a noise. You can do a vibration.
Oh no, we're going to shock.
Oh,
him.
you can do the shock. You're going to
Yeah,
go with the shock with Will Levis.
His hair will be white by the end of the game. Yeah.
Anyway, Burrows, he had 2 interceptions and a lost fumble versus the Titans, but he also threw 3 touchdown passes. Okay, now let's go to Ask Mike. We got a couple kind of unusual questions. This one, I don't quite understand it, but it's Andre from DC. I think he's a friend of my future daughter-in-law, Marissa from DC, who was on our Thanksgiving special. But we've got some fans that listen to the podcast in DC. He wants to know, should the divisions reorganize more by geography and location to maximize fan support on the road, Mike? I think that there's a couple exceptions. I think the divisions are pretty geographically aligned, don't you think?
You know, they've always tried to do that, but it is hard because the Midwest and West Coast, and then Midwest and the East Coast, it's just, you know, you can't just have all Midwest teams. Yeah, I guess you could, but you'd have to change AFC and NFC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you'd have to do something in the conference.
Do all that. You'd have Chicago, St. Louis, Cleveland, Cincinnati, for instance, all in one, and
Something
Detroit.
like that, yeah.
You know, you could always do that. I mean, it does make some sense, but I'm not sure the NFL worries about that at this point. They make so much money, but.
And I think Dallas, when they realigned, when they went to 4-team divisions, which was wasn't that during your tenure as Rams head coach when they did that? I believe so. When they went to, that was, you know, you used to be in that division with Atlanta and New Orleans, and then they switched over. It was about 01, 02, 03.
No, they were, when I was at the Redskins, we were in there with Dallas and Philadelphia and New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, though, Dallas, when they realigned and went from 3 divisions per conference, Dallas said, no, we're not moving. We're staying with our historical rivals, even though it's not geography. And I guess Jerry Jones ruled they stayed with the East Coast teams. And I tell you what, the fans travel no matter how close. They just get on a plane and go. Look at that Seattle-Green Bay game. There were so many Green Bay fans in that game.
Right. And I think today – it wouldn't make as much sense as it would, say, 30 years ago, you know. 30 years ago, you know, just look at all what's on TV football-wise. You can watch every game televised. And not necessarily the case. You know, it was all regional before. But, I mean, you look at Dallas. You could take Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, and Atlanta and put them in a 4-team league, and that'd be quite a league, you know. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think it always has made sense to do that. But, you know, I think the traditional rivalries like San Francisco and St. Louis, you couldn't break that up.
Right. Yeah. Rams and Niners. You got to, that's right. You got to keep that together. Okay. One more question is from Timothy Holler. He's been a questioner in the past. He's wondering about picking a quarterback in today's free agent market. Do you take a rookie or a veteran who's had a mixed career, or do you just pony up and go for a top 10 quarterback, which means you're going to pay a ton of money, and if it doesn't work out, you're crippled with the cap? Look at what's going to happen with the Falcons now and Kirk Cousins. I guess specifically, he wants to ask, would you pay Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold this offseason? Who would you go after if you were a GM or a head coach?
Brock Purdy.
And why?
I just think he's better. You know, his processing, his ability to, I think he's pretty exceptional, and I think Sam has done it for 1 year, you know, and I think he's a real good player. But for me, I'd probably pick Brock Purdy. The thing I'd tell you is, you know, if you have a high grade on a guy that gets drafted and doesn't make it someplace, because there are far more good quarterbacks and far less good situations for quarterbacks, if you know what I mean. Sam Darnold is a perfect example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's with the Jets, he's with Carolina, and nobody likes him. He goes to San Francisco for a year, then he ends up there and in Minnesota, and he's got it turned around. So if you have a guy that you really like come out of the draft, say 2 or 3 years ago, and for whatever reasons he's a backup, I'd go get him. That's what we did with Mark Bulger.
Yes.
When Mark Bulger came out, we weren't going to take a quarterback. I said put a red dot on him and track him. And if he becomes available for us, we'll nail him. And we did.
Yeah, he was.
I think that's one of the ways. I'd be very careful about paying a quarterback that's been in the league over 10 years a lot of money. You just got to be real careful with that. You know, and I do think that there's nothing wrong with Kirk Cousins as much as I just don't know that what they're doing with him is something that he can excel with.
Yeah. Yeah. Bulger, by the way, was a 6th-round draft pick by New Orleans, I believe. Okay,
Yes,
we're going to be right back. We're going to look at next week's games.
Can Graybar help my electrical and datacom jobs be more productive?
Yep. Our supply chain services are designed to do just that.
Like job site services?
Yep. We deliver the products you need where and when you need them, no matter your industry.
What if I have technical questions?
Yep. Our specialists are top-notch.
Emergency support?
Yep. Even after hours.
They're a unicorn.
When you need to keep your projects productive and profitable, rely on Graybar to help you get the job done right. No unicorns required. Yep, Graybar does that.
We are back. Just a couple of reminders. Those Ask Mike questions. I'm at JTom1 on Twitter, and you can, or X, and you can send your questions there. I'm also on Blue Sky for you Blue Skies, and you can, it's also JTom, whatever the Blue Sky handle at bluesky.com or Blue Sky Social, or you can just email me, jtom72@outlook.com. We get a big kick out of these questions. We love the reader participation. One other programming note, with Christmas coming up next Wednesday, we will be on the airwaves Tuesday. So those of you that watch us live can check us out on Tuesday. And we're doing it Tuesday, Christmas Eve, because there are 3 games, I think, on at least 2 games on Christmas. Okay, week 16 matchups. Mike, all the action is the best matchups, with rare exceptions, are tonight, Thursday night, or the 2 Saturday games. Thursday night, we have a battle for wild card survival. Broncos 9-5 at Chargers 8-6. The Chargers are 3-point favorites, but they've been struggling. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Their defense remains pretty good, even though they got scorched for 40 against Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield. But their offense, they've scored just 17 points in each of the last 3 games. I also want to mention, Mike, they're 1-5 against teams with winning records. So they've got most of their victories against the lesser teams. Who do you like in this one, Michael?
The Broncos. I think I don't know who he's going to throw the ball to, Herbert. And there's certainly the running game has disappeared now with the loss of the running back. So, and they played good defense down there. But I'll tell you, Denver's really playing well on defense. And of course, I think of Bo Nix and that whole. They're so creative. Sean does such a great job at game planning. And I just think that a lack of firepower on offense, even though they got, I think, one of the best talents in the NFL at quarterback, and just a really ultra underline ultra conservative offense.
Right.
Yeah, I think Denver wins this.
They met way back in Game 5, and Denver jumped to a 23-0 lead after 3, and then held on for a 23-16 lead. Mike, that was a game where Jim Harbaugh missed the start of the game. He was checked for an irregular heartbeat, so that was a scary afternoon.
Well, he may not show up at this one then.
Broncos, to your point, have won 5 in a row, 9 of their last 12. Bo Nix, 20 touchdown passes. May not sound like much. It's 10th in the league, 10th best in the league, and first by the rookie quarterbacks. Denver clinches with a win, a wild card spot. The Chargers clinch a wild card spot with a win, plus they need some help. We're both going with the Broncos there. Okay, let's go to Saturday. That's right. There are Saturday games in the NFL. we've got those Christmas Eve games on our Christmas Day games on Wednesday. So this year, the NFL will play Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Wednesday. The league is just if they can make a buck and get they're gonna play at any time. Texans at Chiefs is a noon game on Saturday on NBC. Texans 9-5. They've won 3 out of 4. Mike, I think you would agree though they haven't looked that impressive. The Chiefs are 13-1. Will Mahomes start? Will he not? Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites.
I'm going to take the Texans here. I don't think Mahomes plays. And if he does play, he's going to be limited. If it's truly high ankle sprain, if that's what it really is, I can't imagine him playing in this game. If that's really what it is, other than just a regular old ankle sprain. But nonetheless, the struggles with with Stroud is simply the offensive line, and I guess Mixon is just not. They just haven't gotten him on track.
Yeah,
it was going really good there.
I mean, he's had some good moments. The Mahomes, if he plays, he's cleaned up on the turnovers, which have been a problem for him most of the last couple of years. Only 2 interceptions since week 9 for him. But the Texans defense, 19 interceptions, which is second in the league. And since week 6, they have 16 interceptions. The Chiefs can clinch a number 1 seed with a win and a Buffalo loss at New England. I don't think it's happening because I sure don't think Buffalo's losing at New England. I'm going to go with I'm going to be the contrarian and go with the Chiefs. Okay. The other Saturday game, another Rust Belt game. These AFC North games are usually slugfest, highly entertaining. This is on Fox, 3:30. Steelers 10-4 at Ravens 9-5. Ravens are 6.5-point favorite. The Steelers had a 5-game winning streak in the middle of the season. Since then, they've lost 2 of 4. Baltimore's also been kind of treading water. They've lost 2 of their last 4. They met on November 17th. The Steelers beat the Ravens 18-16. Baltimore had 12 penalties, 3 turnovers, season low for the Ravens, points and yards. The Steelers have won 7 of their last 8 against Baltimore, all decided by 7 points or less. For all his great things, Mike, Lamar Jackson struggles against the Steelers. He's 1-4 as a starter against the Steelers. What do you think about this one?
I still think that Baltimore wins this thing. If it wasn't at Baltimore, maybe I wouldn't pick him. But I think with them, the home field advantage is definitely a big deal. They're just so talented. They've got to raise up and do this, and they're just a better team talent wise than the Steelers. But Mike Tomlin does such a great job, as you know. I just don't think Russell Wilson's better than average right now, and I think the matchup there, which Lamar should get off the spot here, and I'm gonna go with Baltimore.
I'm gonna go Baltimore too. The Ravens have played, I think, better defense lately. Mike, the winner of this game wins the AFC North. So this is a huge game. I want to talk Giants at Falcons just to get into the Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix Jr. is starting this game. The Giants are 2-12. They've lost their last 9, which ties a franchise record. The Falcons are listing, but they're struggling. They're 8.5-point favorites. The Falcons are 1 game behind Tampa, Mike, but the Falcons have the tiebreaker because they swept Tampa Bay. Is this the time to change QBs to put Michael Penix Jr. in? You could still win the division.
Ordinarily, no, but I tell you what, I watch Cousins and I don't recognize him. I mean, some of his throws, my gosh, they're humiliating throws. I mean, why would you put the ball there? I don't get it. I don't know what's going on with him. I'm just baffled, and he's a guy that has always been a good decision maker. That just doesn't happen. There's a reason for it. I don't know what it is, but I think Penix, I really liked him coming out, big arm and all that good stuff. I don't know. I don't care who's at quarterback. They're going to beat the Giants.
Yeah. I picked the Falcons too. Talk about when you mentioned Cousins doesn't look like the same guy. This is the same guy who threw for 509 yards against Tampa on October 3rd. He threw for 112 yards against the Raiders. 112 yards. He threw only 17 passes. I don't think I've ever seen a coach be so afraid to have the quarterback throw. They just didn't want him making any decisions throwing the football.
Well, 3 weeks before, I can't remember who they played, but he threw 3 picks, and they were just all ugly throws. Throws you should never make. There's something going on there. I don't know what it is. It's just not – he just all of a sudden did become a bad player. There's a reason for those. I just don't know what it is.
And I don't think you have to be a body language expert on him. There's so many close-up shots now, all the cameras at this game. His confidence looks shot.
I think what happens, too, he's getting paid that big contract.
Mm-hmm.
And he started off really good, and you have a bad game or two, and you start to feel a little bit. Maybe he's feeling it. I don't know. But there's a reason for it. That's not who he really is. He's got to get back in stride, so to speak. That's just not who he is.
Okay, Lions at Bears. This is an early Sunday game. The Giants and Falcons also we're in the Sunday now, early Sunday game. Okay, Lions 12-2, Bears 4-10. The Bears have lost 8 in a row. Mike, during that 8-game streak, they've averaged just 14.8 points a game. They're just not scoring. They met these teams on Thanksgiving Day. That was the infamous game that cost the Eberflus his job, the 23-20, where the clock management with Caleb Williams was just not there at the end of the game. Because the Lions, I think, will have plenty of offense to handle the Bears. Don't you think, even without Montgomery? And maybe the Bears will score more, but as bad as the Bears have been on offense, as I mentioned during this losing streak, I don't think this is the team that's going to give the Lions trouble by scoring 30 points on that defense. Do you?
I don't know. They came back the second half of their last game, and they just put it together. It's just like at halftime, they took the air out of the ball for Detroit. I couldn't understand that. And all of a sudden, they couldn't get a first down either. So this is an emotional game for Detroit. They go back and look at that. That was a humiliating half for them, and they lost some players. And, this is a big game for them. This is almost like a must-win to get themselves ready for the playoffs.
Yeah. So I'm taking the Lions. Although you have some reservations, you're still going with Lions. You always take the Lions.
Yeah.
Okay, not asking for a pick. Just want to go through this quick. Browns at the Bengals. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the former fifth-round pick out of UCLA. He's starting in place of Jameis Winston. The Titans at the Colts. Mason Rudolph is like we mentioned, is starting for Will Levis. NFC East. This is the best Sunday game, I would say. Eagles at the Commanders. Eagles 12-2. They've won 10 in a row. The Commanders 9-5. They've won their last 2. Before that, they had a 3-game skid. Eagles are only a 3.5-point game. So Las Vegas, the odds makers, are expecting a close game.
I think it will be close. That's a hard road game for the Eagles. I think that they've got revitalized on offense a little bit. I'm talking about the Commanders now. I think he looks a lot more comfortable. They've changed up some things. I think this will be a close game.
Your pick? Who are you picking here?
Eagles. Okay.
I'm going Eagles too. They met on November 15th, and it was for first place in the East. That was the game. The Commanders entered 7-3. Philly, which had already played their bye, entered at 7-2. So the winner of that game was going to be the leader in the NFC East. And we all saw the Eagles won 26-18, and really haven't looked back. That was the game, Mike, you might remember, where the Commanders were down 12-2 in the fourth quarter. They were in field goal range, but Dan Quinn went for it on fourth down, and Jaden Daniels was stopped, and that kind of switched the momentum of the game. The Commanders are in with win plus help. The Eagles can clinch the NFC East with a win. One last note on Jalen Hurts, and Mike, just want to ask you about maybe if that was kind of a statement game from last week. Only 3 turnovers he's had during the 10-game winning streak, so he's really taking care of the football.
He is. He's always been a guy that wants to hold the ball, but he's very, very careful with it. He's not a guy to just give it up and give it away. He's never really been that way. I think he's very judicious with it, but he is a guy that wants to scramble around back there.
Okay, let's go to the late games. 3:05 game on Fox. Vikings at the Seahawks. Vikings just a 3-point favorite. The Seahawks, we talked about a little bit in our opening segment how they look. They kind of look like they're toast, and they're only. And again, I know your Rams teams always had a lot of success up there in Seattle, but usually for most teams, that's a tough place to play. They're only 3-5 at home, Mike, while the Vikings are 5-1 away from home. We think Geno Smith is going to play with that. He left with a right knee injury. The Vikings have won 7 straight, but it's against teams that are a combined 34-64, and none of the teams they've beaten during this 7-game streak currently have a winning record. But you got to still like the Vikings, don't you, Mike?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just even if Geno plays, I don't know how long he'll last before he goes out with a knee. Quarterback with a knee injury, if they do play, they just normally don't last very long.
And he's pretty good on the move, and even with a knee, you'd expect his mobility. And as you mentioned earlier, they're so dependent on him. For much of the year, they were the league's top passing team. I don't know if they still are, but they're near the top. The Vikings, by the way, they need this win because they close with the Packers and the Lions. So if they really want to catch the Lions, and hell, they still have a chance for the number 1 seed. Okay, let's go to another late game, 3:25 on CBS. 49ers at Dolphins. Dolphins are a 1-point favorite. 2 6-8 teams. These are 2 teams whose playoff hopes are on, pardon the cliche, they're on life support. What do you think, Mike?
I'm gonna go with the Dolphins. I think a couple of things. There's so much firepower there, and I just think that 49ers have always this year anyway looked like they struggle with speed, and I just think that there's just not a whole lot on offense for the 49ers to put points on the board. There's just nothing there. I mean, they're just. I wish Kyle would open it up a little bit more, and they're just not going to do it. They're going to still be very conservative. So I think Miami.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go Miami here. I think 49ers too, in their heart of hearts, they know I just don't see a path for them to win this division. And if they go 9-8, they're not going to get a wild card. So it's hard to imagine them catching the Rams. Okay, just 2 more games. The Sunday nighter, Buccaneers at Cowboys. Cowboys 6-8. They've won 3 out of their last 4, and so they're playing a little better. And Rico Dowdle has given them. We've talked all year, and I thought the announcers of the Cowboys Carolina game there, they were talking about everything in talking about why the Cowboys are not going to make the playoffs. Everything but the fact we've been on this all year. No running game. Absolutely no running game for the Cowboys. Now, finally, Dowdle's had 3 straight 100-yard games. I think too little, too late. The Bucs now, 4 straight wins. They lost 4 in the middle of the season in a row. Now they've won 4 straight. They're 8-6, and they're 5-2 away from home. They're a good road team. -4. They're a 4-point favorite. The Bucs.
I think, and this will be kind of a projection. I think that defensive line for the Cowboys has changed now. They got their guys back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that with the running game, having the defensive line go again, and I think Hooper's a solid enough quarterback to win with. The thing that bothers me about the Buccaneers is Mayfield against a really good pass rush has been pretty erratic.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with the Cowboys. This would be
a bold move. I'm gonna go with the Bucs. I will say this though, the Bucs during this 4-game winning streak, it's not like they played a murderous row of teams. They've beaten the Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Chargers. Of course, the Chargers, a decent team. The Bucs, they have the Panthers and the Saints after this. So they win this game, I think they're going to survive Atlanta and win out in the NFC South. Okay, our last game of the week is a Monday night game. Saints at Packers. Saints are 5-9. They played better under Darren Reese, the interim head coach. I think they're 3-2 under him, but they're coming off a loss. Packers 10-4. The Packers are 14.5-point favorites, which is a ton in the NFL.
Yeah, Packers, they might be 21-point favorites here. And is this at Green Bay, you said?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be 21. Those guys will get off that bus from New Orleans. They're drinking that chicken soup, hot chicken soup before they go.
You mean they might be a little cold, huh?
Yeah, they'll be fighting over the Long Johns. I want 2 pairs. No, I ain't. Give me the hat. They'll be more concerned about the weather than they will the game.
Packers have won 4 of their last 5. If they win, they clinch a wild card berth. One thing about the Packers here lately, one of their Achilles heels for as good as that defense was, offense, is they weren't for much of the season. They haven't been good in the red zone, but these past 4 games, they've scored touchdowns on almost 71% of their red zone possessions. And Josh Jacobs has been a big part. He's got 9 rushing touchdowns since week 11. We've talked a lot about the running back carousel, all these running backs that have moved around, and Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. But Josh Jacobs, getting him from the Raiders, that's been a big pickup, hasn't it?
He really has. It's a great environment for him, too. He deserves it. You know, he got beat up so bad, and they just weren't very competitive. Now he's on a real good team. And, you know, when that happens, it's fun to watch, you know, because now he gets to shine a little bit and be the reason why. And, you know, the big deal is in the red zone, you've got to be able to run the ball well. You have to have red zone success. And I think he's been the missing link there for them in the red zone.
Yeah, I just quickly before we go, you know, I watched that Raiders game, and they don't have a lot, Mike, especially on offense. Oh my gosh, that's a total rebuild, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Tom Brady's not going to help much either, I don't think. But
unless he can play quarterback, right?
Unless he can play quarterback, yeah.
And one other thing, Michael, the Carolina-Dallas game, a step back for Bryce Young. He had 2 fumbles lost, 2 interceptions, but future still looks bright, don't you think, for him?
Very much so, yeah. He's competing so well. He's gone past what he's been given, if that makes sense. In other words, whatever they're doing on offense, he's doing it and just a little bit more. And only veterans usually do that. So he's kind of turning the page. And, you know, he and Williams, if they can just get some people around those guys,
yeah,
even though they're small in stature, they'll be good players in the league.
Yeah, Carolina, they need some help on the O-line, and they need a couple playmakers, don't you think?
No question. You know, and San Francisco's really kind of in the same boat.
Yeah. That's talking football for this week. Remember, we'll be back Tuesday for a special Christmas Eve edition, and maybe Mike will reveal what present he got me, but we'll see. All right, Mike, we'll see you, man.
All righty. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.